Hello. Oh, Lord.
So
Be with me, God. I need all your grace.
I don't understand why Mary's so rude to me.
She's not a listener. If you think I'm poor, ask me. But she just assumed I was.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl, the Brooke Ashley, and today we are here to discuss The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, Season 5, Episode 2. And before we get into it, let me start off by saying that y'all did that. Because I'm so sorry, but this second episode was better than a good majority of the other franchise's whole entire seasons. That's saying a lot. Baby, the way I was gagged when Britney and Mary got into it, we actually got some personal story from Mary in her confessional. We'll talk more about that later. But I said, oh yes, I am all the way tuned in. And Miss Mary Cosby, they made the right decision, making you full-time again. But y'all, without further ado, let's just jump right on into it because you guys already know that we don't have a minute to spare. So we start off the episode with Lisa and Bronwyn riding around in Lisa's G-Wagon. Now, a quick side note, I love a G-Wagon. I think they're so beautiful. They're just such it girl cars. And I think it's so funny because Meredith also has a G-Wagon too. But anyhow, I digress. So as they're driving around, Lisa's asking Bronwyn, what did she think about what went down at her party last night? So Bronwyn jokes that she was completely unprepared for what went down. They both start laughing. And now Lisa goes on to ask Bronwyn, so what was that about last night with you and Britney? So Bronwyn says that Britney came in a little hot with her. Remember how Britney accidentally insulted both Mary and Bronwyn by saying that Mary was a hoarder and saying that she grew up poor, and then insulting Bronwyn's YSL jacket by calling it a costume. So Bronwyn goes on to say that the encounter that she had with Britney was a lot for her. And may I be completely honest, I really feel like Bronwyn and Mary are both doing a lot when it comes to what Britney said. It was obvious that Britney did not mean any harm. She put her foot in her mouth. It happens. We all say dumb things sometimes, and there's no malicious intent behind it. Things happen. Nobody's perfect. For Bronwyn to act as if Britney is the worst person and she was so offensive and she can't believe that and it was just so much for her, then I don't know what to tell you, sis. You might be on the wrong show. If somebody calling your 15 grand YSL jacket a costume by accident is the worst thing in the world, you have a pretty good life. It's a little bit dramatic to say that Britney came in hot with you when it was a clear accident, it was a mistake. She wasn't purposely trying to be rude or shade you. You know the difference between somebody really being shady and being passive aggressive with you versus somebody who really does not mean any harm. And I have to say, I think that Britney did not mean any harm. So now Bronwyn brings up how the dinner went left and how she barely ate because it was so much going on. So she says, I just want to say, I do think that you are right with a lot of what you said to Whitney last night, but it does seem like Angie K, while she was defending Whitney, it seems like she's not aware of how much she was hurting you. So as they're talking about the drama, we hear Lisa's phone ringing and it's Angie K calling her. So Lisa's like, Bronwyn, would you excuse me for a second? Would you mind just being quiet? So we hear Angie K's voice on the other line, and she says, hey Lisa, are you free later on today? Because I would love for us to have a one-on-one conversation, just me and you. So Lisa says that right now she's running errands, but she'll text Angie K when she's free. So now we cut to a few short scenes. We see Whitney and her family unpacking, because remember, they just moved. Now, is it just me? But Whitney and Justin's new house looks just like their old house. So now we jump over to Angie K at home, and she's telling her husband Sean about all the drama that went down last night. She says that it was a gang up on Whitney and she felt bad for her, and then at one point Lisa got up and lunged at her. So Sean says that Lisa was obviously trying to intimidate her and Angie can't allow that. And one thing about Angie K, when she argues with somebody, she can definitely hold her own. So I don't worry about Angie K in an argument because she is quick on her feet. She can give you a good read. And I do feel like if somebody ever tried to come for her in that way, Angie would get with you. I do believe that Angie could throw a punch or something. I don't think that Angie K would sit there and take it. And now we jump over to Mary. She's at home with her son, Robert Jr., and she's telling him about what happened between her and Britney. So she says, this lady comes up to me and she just assumed that I'm poor. Don't ever call me poor because that's being ungrateful to God. The way her son looked at her like, girl, what? And even Mary didn't even know what she was saying. I said, Mary, what's going on up here? And like I said a few minutes ago, I feel like Bronwyn and Mary are both dragging this issue. It wasn't that deep. Britney was not trying to insult you. She was trying to relate to you, Mary. She put her foot in her mouth. She acknowledged it. And it is what it is. For you to be holding this grudge like she cursed you out and called you out your name or something, it's a bit much. And also, Mary, let's not forget that when you were talking to Britney, you did say out your own mouth that growing up, you have 5 siblings and there wasn't enough. So that would lead anybody to believe that things weren't flush and that money was tight. So we see Mary and her son eating donuts, and Mary says that Robert Jr. is still at home. He lives with her. He's not in college. He's not working. He asks her for money. And I said, Mary, it's no shade, but what were you doing as a parent? Because Robert is grown. He's what, 21, 22? And I'm happy that he comes from means that you can't help him, but he needs to be working. He should not be spending his time just lazing around doing nothing. Also, isn't he still married? So he's married with a wife, living in your house with no job and no money, asking you? And you did admit that he's sheltered and that's your fault. But I said, I feel like you're using that as an excuse because there are sheltered kids who still have a job. Also, where is Robert Sr.? I feel like after season 1, we never saw the husband / step grandfather again. It was like, shout out to everybody, I have fun.
Oh! Shout out to everybody, I have fun. I gotta be good.
And I know you guys have seen the blog reports that are speculating that Mary and Robert Sr. are headed for divorce. I wouldn't be surprised. That was clearly a loveless marriage. They both look miserable and unhappy. I feel like Mary doesn't even mention him. She only talks about her or her son. That's it. So now we jump right back over to Lisa and Bronwyn in the car, and they pull up to Heather's house. So they're having a cute little girls' day, and they're going to Wendy's. Now, when they pulled up to that drive-thru, I was screaming. Heather already knew what she wanted to order. She said, I'll have a junior Baconator with some fries and a Frosty. I said, I know that's right. And I said this on Twitter, but it bears repeating. Does Lisa get free Wendy's for life since she's now partners with Wendy's? I'm pretty sure she does. That's usually how it goes. I'm thinking back to the brand deals that I've had, and I got the free services. So yeah, and Wendy's is that girl. I love the spicy nuggets. I also love the spicy chicken sandwich. I love the hamburger. So my mouth was low-key watering when they pulled up in the drive-thru. And Bravo, just a suggestion for BravoCon next year. Can you please have a Wendy's food truck? There need to be way more food options, in my humble opinion. So now Lisa wants Heather's opinion on what she thought about last night, and Heather says that she thought the whole thing was crazy. So of course Lisa interjects to tell us how upset she is for the millionth time, and she says, I'm just so disappointed in Whitney because I've given her so much grace. I'm really disgusted that she would bash me on a podcast. But I'm even more disappointed in Angie K because the fact that she would go behind my back and repeat my feelings to Whitney. If Angie K wants to get close to Whitney, that's great, but it does change our dynamic. But I don't want what I've said in confidence to be weaponized against me. And I do feel like that's fair. I believe that if you and your friend are talking about somebody or something in confidence, that is your job to not go back and repeat it. So I do understand why Lisa is pissed at Angie K, because Angie K was wrong and that was messy of her to go behind Lisa's back and run and tell Whitney. You don't do that, especially if you value Lisa's friendship. There was no point in doing that other than to insert yourself in drama because you want a moment. And Angie, we'll talk about this in a few minutes, but I do feel like Lisa has grounds to be angry at you because that was wrong. So now Heather jumps back in and she says, honestly, I couldn't sleep. I woke up in the middle of the night asking, did we gang up on Whitney? So Bronwyn jumps in and she reassures Heather and Lisa that it was not a gang up. Now, Bronwyn, I know that you're happy to be in tight with Lisa and Heather, but you don't have to lie. It was a gang up. They did pile on Whitney. And while I don't see it for Whitney, we can still call a spade a spade. So now Bronwyn starts imitating Whitney and she pretty much says that Whitney came in with these rehearsed reads. She says, did she practice that in the mirror? So while Bronwyn is going on and on about Whitney, Heather is staring at Bronwyn and she's like, see, this is the energy that burned me in the past because I'm a bit weary of people who have such strong opinions about people that they just met. So now we see production play the flashbacks of last season when Monica was there. So now we jump over to Meredith and Seth and they're having a date night. They're taking a cooking class and it was funny because they were learning how to cook shashuka. And I remembered when Erin made that from the Real Housewives of New York, when she had them all up to her home in the Hamptons and she made it for them and you had Sai being obnoxious saying, what is that? I don't like this. Like, it's eggs and some sauce together. I don't like that. Just being a complete pain. But the shashuka that the chef made for Meredith and Seth looked amazing. So anyhow, we find out from Meredith that Seth has started a new job and it's in Ohio. Now, I know that Meredith and Seth have been married for, I think, 30 years, but that doesn't get a bit old with Seth living in another state and you guys barely seeing each other. I don't know. Remember in season 1, they were on the brink of divorce because he was always traveling. So I'm just surprised that he took another job that's states away, but they're obviously making it work. They seem to be happy and that's all that matters, right? It's not our marriage. If they like it, I love it. So as they're eating their shashuka, Meredith brings up how they had this dish at their son Reed's bar mitzvah years ago. So she goes on to say that she's been thinking about it for quite some time, but she wants to get back in touch with her Jewish roots. So she reveals that she wants to have a bat mitzvah. So Seth is speechless, but he's really happy to hear it. He says that for Meredith to commit to this at the back half of their lives is beautiful. So Meredith lets us know that in Judaism, a bar bat mitzvah is a Jewish person's coming of age that happens around 12 or 13. Now, growing up in New York, I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood and I've been to quite a few bar bat mitzvahs and they were always so much fun, very lavish. The food was chef's kiss, okay? So I know a thing or two about a bar and bat mitzvah, okay? It's a good time. So the fact that Meredith wants to have one now, money is going to be spent. But Meredith reveals that growing up, her parents did not put a big emphasis on religion. They were just Jewish because of their heritage. So she says that her and her sister did not have a bat mitzvah. Neither did her mom or her grandmothers. Overall, I thought this was a cute scene and I loved how supportive Seth was. He really loved this decision. He was just so excited for Meredith. And it was touching to see Meredith emotional about this too, because I feel like we don't usually see the vulnerable side of Meredith. So to see her show another side of herself was sweet. And one more thing. I saw on Twitter, somebody has said, can somebody please explain to me why is Meredith always renting, especially since she's rich? And Meredith responded, she said, I get this question all the time. Let me put this to bed. The reason for that is I only spend 4 to 6 months in Utah. The rest of my time is spent in New York, Europe, LA. So I'm not trying to pay a mortgage here in Utah when I'm all around the world. I'm international, okay? I'm a jet setter.
Bling, bling, bling. Bitches is mad.
So I just said, okay, Meredith, let us know. So now we jump to Angie K and Lisa meeting up for a drink and some conversation. Now, one thing that I can't stand is when they're at a restaurant and the restaurant is empty and it's nothing but production sitting at the other tables. I said, can you guys make it any more obvious that it's all production there? Because we see a table behind them and it's production sitting there with this big old laptop. I said, well, way to make it obvious. Can you guys at least serve production some food so that we can feel like there are actual customers there and not just them in production? So things are a bit awkward between Angie K and Lisa, because remember what happened last night. So we cut to Lisa in her confessional and she says, for years, me and Angie would talk all the time. I care for her and I really care about our friendship. And it really shocks me that she cares so little for our friendship. To take the things that I've said about Whitney and tell Whitney, it's really hurtful and upsetting. So Angie starts off the conversation and she says, well, thank you for meeting me. I wanted to talk to you one-on-one because last night I couldn't sleep. It really didn't hit me until last night that you guys were all ganging up on Whitney. So when it comes to this whole conversation between Lisa and Angie K, they're both right and they're both wrong. So Lisa interjects and makes it clear that Angie K going back and telling Whitney what she said to her in confidence is a complete no-no, it's a violation, and it's not right. Now, right here, I was expecting Angie K to say, you know what, Lisa, you're right. I was wrong for that. I'm sorry. Angie K, you know I like you and all, sis, but you did not own up to it. You just kept saying, yeah, I know. And that excuse that you gave saying, well, I wasn't telling Whitney to be messy. I told her because I thought that there could be a way for them to make up. Let's not do that. Please don't play in our faces, Angie. You went back with the sole intention to stir up drama and mess and to insert yourself in the drama. And a lot of y'all made up some great points in my last recap that while you think Angie K is cool and all, you do feel that she is a social climber, and she is. Angie K has always been very thirsty to be on this show. Meredith called her out in season 3 when she said, girl, you've auditioned for this show every single season and they have denied you. The fact that she was so eager to throw Jen Shah that birthday party at her house, that was her way to get on. When Jen Shah went to jail, you definitely did cozy up to Lisa Barlow so that she could recommend you to get on the show full time last season, and the plan worked. Again, Angie, I like you and all, but in this instance, you should have just apologized for going back and running your mouth and breaking Lisa's trust. Now, Lisa, here's where I have to whack you because Miss Mamas, you tried it. Angie calls Lisa out for the fact that Lisa makes it hard for people to be honest with her about their feelings. She goes to point out how Heather sticking up for her last night was a way to prove herself to Lisa that they're a team. So Lisa's getting upset and she says, no, Heather was frustrated, I was frustrated, and I don't need Heather to defend me. I can do that myself. I'm good. I feel like I'm being labeled right now, and this is where I close up. So now Angie K points out how Lisa does not realize when she overtalks somebody, when she starts yelling. And now Lisa jumps in and she says, that's just who I am. I'm passionate. I yell. I talk with my hands. That's me. That's Lisa Barlow, okay? I'm in my mid-late 40s and you either like it or you don't. And I said, Lisa, that's everybody's issue with you, including mine and a lot of the other viewers. You have a hard time taking honest feedback when it comes to you. I'm not saying that you can't be confident in who you are and like who you are. That's great. You should like who you are. But with you really feel like you don't do anything wrong. It was irking me so bad hearing you snap at Angie K when she's telling you, sometimes, Lisa, it is hard to talk to you because you get defensive. And I do feel like you don't really want friends. You want fans around you. You want people to blow smoke up your ass all day, every day. And that's not fair to anybody. And you also have a hard time with owning up to your bad behavior. Let's not forget that when that hot mic episode dropped, you made so many excuses about what you said about your best friend. It was like, well, she hurt me first and it was in the bathroom. I didn't mean to say it, but I said it and it is what it is. You pretty much went around and around the mulberry bush before you apologized to Meredith. So as Lisa's going on this long rant about how she knows who the F she is, Angie K says, I've seen this movie before. Lisa wants you to be quiet and just agree with her, and I'm not doing that. And Lisa, you're going to run people off if that's how you operate. But then again, you seem to want yes men. You don't want friends. Because I noticed in the beginning scene, when Bronwyn said to you, I pretty much agreed with everything that you said thank you. I thought that was a very strange response. It just gives that you do not want to hear any negative feedback when it comes to you. You only want people to say what you want to hear, and if they don't do that, you have an issue. And you wonder why people say that they walk on eggshells around you or that you're self-centered and don't care, because that's how you come across. But anyhow, Angie K goes on to say that that's other people's perception of Lisa, and Lisa says, honestly, that's an easy out. I don't know why they feel that way, but it's an easy out at this point. And if everybody feels like I'm a self-centered villain bitch, then I'll be that. And I said, Lisa, stop being so immature. You're just upset that Angie K is politely calling you out, that your behavior is not always perfect, and you don't want to hear it. So now your first thing is to get upset. So Lisa puts her sunglasses on and she says, well, Angie, I love you, and I hope that we can continue this conversation later. And she gets up and leaves. And I just said, I'm sorry, Lisa, but I lost a bit of respect. Because the fact that you can't just sit down and have a woman-to-woman conversation with Angie K is pathetic. And one more thing. While I don't care for Whitney, I think that she's very messy. She's the Ashley Darby of SLC. I really do feel like Lisa is making too big of a deal about what Whitney said about her on that podcast. Because honestly and truthfully, what Whitney said really wasn't that bad. She just said that Lisa always thinks that she's right and that she's the villain. We've heard people go on podcasts and say a lot worse. The way Lisa is carrying on, you would have thought that Whitney called her a see you next Tuesday or said that she was broke and ugly and like, I don't know. If I were Lisa, I would have paid that podcast episode dust, if I'm being honest. I wouldn't even give that any attention. So now we jump to Bronwyn. She's at home, and Bronwyn's home at first sight, it's huge. Lovely kitchen, very colorful, very eclectic taste, but you know that money was spent, okay? So we finally get to meet Todd, Bronwyn's husband, and right out the gate, he reminded me a little bit of Logan Roy from Succession, the father. But anyhow, we see Bronwyn and Todd on the couch. They're talking, and Bronwyn gives her husband this gift from Louis Vuitton, and he liked it a lot. And I said, now we all know that she bought him that gift with his credit card, as she should. So we find out that Bronwyn met her husband Todd 10 years ago. She was living in San Francisco and she was working in investment banking. So she says that one day she was supposed to meet a client for lunch and she was sitting at the bar and Todd was at the bar a few stools down. So she says that Todd was really funny and he asked her for her email address. So she says that when she went back to work the next day, she told all the guys that she worked with on the trading floor that she met this older gentleman at the bar and he asked for her email address. So she thought that he wanted to mentor her professionally. So the guys were like, girl, you need to stop. He does not want to mentor you. He wants to get with you, okay? Like, he only asks you for your email because if he's old, he probably doesn't know how to text you. Remember, she's 38, he's 65. She met him when she was 28 and he was 55. So Todd's money is quite long because we learned from Bronwyn that he's an OG in the tech world. He used to be the CEO of all the Palm devices the Palm Pilot, all that. So now he is in private equity, and the hedge fund that he's at is based in New York. And he's in New York 2 to 3 days out the week. So now we learn even more because Bronwyn and Todd's interior designer comes over, and we find out that they just moved into their home a year ago. So hearing that and then finding out that Todd is based out of New York, I said, wait, Bronwyn is giving that you and Todd moved to SLC to get on this show. But we see Bronwyn and her interior designer having a conversation, and Bronwyn mentions that she wants to set up her daughter Gwen's room before she moves out. So Bronwyn says that her and her daughter are super close. She had her daughter at 19. That's why she got kicked out of BYU. And then we find out that Gwen's father wanted nothing to do with her. So it's been her and Gwen since she was 19. And we know that Bronwyn and her husband Todd don't have any kids together. But all in all, I think that Bronwyn so far is a good addition. And I do feel like she has a very interesting backstory. I'm intrigued. So now we jump over to Whitney and Heather hanging out, and they're at a crystal store. So we cut to Whitney in her confessional, and she says that she's in her feels right now because while she loves Heather, Heather is her girl. What happened at the Bezos party really sucked. So as they're browsing around the store, Whitney starts off the conversation and she says, Heather, that was a total gang up. And Heather dismisses Whitney. She says, no, it was not a gang up. We were all stating our issues with you and you just said no. So now Whitney starts whining about how if Lisa had just taken the time to listen to her prior, she wouldn't have to go on a podcast and blast her. So now Heather calls Whitney out and she says, honestly, Whitney, it feels like you don't give an F about any of your friendships. You're doing you, you're on your healing journey, and we all have to deal with it. Now, I want them all to stop saying, healing journey, I'm tired. I don't think that we've seen any growth, especially from Whitney. And Whitney, how many seasons are you going to drag out this so-called healing journey anyway? You've been talking about healing since season 1. We don't care anymore. And it also feels like a lazy way to stay on this show without having a real storyline. So now Whitney calls out Heather for not standing up for her. And Heather says, you know what, you're right, I'm sorry for that. I could have done better. But Whitney, are you really surprised that Heather left you out to dry like that? Because when it comes to getting close to Lisa Barlow, Heather is going to take the bait every time. But Heather does call out Whitney for her behavior, and she says, but Whitney, if 3 or more friends are telling you the same thing, then what does that mean? So Whitney does acknowledge that, and she says, you're right. If 3 or more people are saying the same thing, then that does mean that I do need to take a look at that. So now Whitney goes on to say that she's unsure of how this group is going to be able to move forward because they keep going back. Then she goes on to say that she's unsure of what to do now because she did have a girls' trip planned and she wanted to invite everybody. So Heather is immediately intrigued. She's like, wait, what trip? So we find out that Trixie Mattel had invited Whitney to host her drag bar in Milwaukee. So Whitney goes on to say that the only people that she can invite now are Angie K, Bronwin, and now Heather since they've made up. So now we find out from Whitney that her and Bronwyn hung out a few days ago and she loves Bronwyn. She thinks that she's awesome, a great time. So now we cut to Heather's confessional and she's like, really, Bronwyn? Bronwyn doesn't even like you. And I said, no, Heather, I'm going to whack you quickly at the end because you tried it. You were also trying to put some extra sauce on stuff. Like, girl, it's not that deep. Let's not make things bigger than what they are. And now Heather says that she's hosting a team building day and hopefully that will be a way for everybody to move forward because she's not trying to have Whitney throw this trip away. So now we cut to Heather and Britney hanging out and they're playing pickleball. So we get to find out some more information about Miss Britney. And when I tell you that her life is quite scandalous, she has a lot going on. It's a bit chaotic. But Heather says that Britney is one of her Mormon friends and they met through Angie Harrington. Shout out to Angie Harrington. And I feel so bad for her because Miss Mamas was desperate to get on this show and she was only able to be a friend of, never made it to full time. But anyhow, Heather goes on to say that she likes Britney because she's vulnerable, she's charming, she's sweet, and she's a nice change from her other friends who are defensive and cynical. And I'm guessing that she's talking about this friend group right here. So Britney tells Heather that she's excited for Heather's team building activity because after the other night, they all need it. So now Heather brings up Britney and Jared's relationship. So now we cut to Britney's confessional and we find out that yes, she's Mormon, but she's been married and divorced twice. And she met Jared because of her divorce from her second husband. We find out that both of their exes started seeing each other. I was like, oh, well, damn. That might be a little awkward. No? Yes? How does that work? Now you guys have pretty much swapped partners? It's a whole lot going on in Utah. But Britney says that from there on, their friendship turned into romance. And now we cut to a clip from 3 days earlier, and we see Jared and Britney talking, and Jared tells her that they've had a very interesting 7 months as best friends. And she's just standing there looking confused. Now, Britney, I want to hold your hand when I say this. And I'm going to say it again at the end of this episode because Miss Mamas, you are quite delusional. But a man breaking up with you 16 times during a 7-month period and he has yet to refer to you as his girlfriend, he's calling you his best friend, he don't like you. If a man makes you feel confused, he does not like you. He does not want you. He is using you for sex, convenience. You're a placeholder because when you are the woman that a man wants, he's not playing about you. This man is giving you mixed signals at y'all's big ages because he's using you as a woman for convenience. You're there. He does not actually want you, sis. And to see you go out sad like this, I have secondhand embarrassment. So now Britney wants to know, why isn't Heather dating? Heather says that her life is finally going in the direction that she wants it to go, and why mess it up with a man? So then she goes on to say that Britney knows that she had a horrible marriage, and Britney says, yeah, I know, you and I both had very similar situations. And this game of pickleball got really deep, because the way Heather was all the way in Britney's business, now Heather starts asking Britney, why can't she be single? It seems like after every divorce, she's always in a new relationship with a new man. Why is that? So we find out from Britney that for some reason, she always puts love on a pedestal to her own detriment. And again, Britney is giving big pick-me behavior. And I also feel like you're really going this hard for Jared because of who his family is. Remember how we found out that he's the nephew of Donnie and Marie Osmond. So I feel like that's another reason why she's so stuck on this man. Now, the way I gagged when Britney revealed that she's sacrificed her kids for a man, I said, girl, what? I said, come again? You're really saying this out loud on national TV? I'm glad that you're admitting it, but I think that it's incredibly troubling that you have willingly put men before yourself and your children. And then we find out from Heather that when she was married to her ex-husband, she used to do the same thing, put her husband over her kids and herself. And then we find out that in Mormonism, you can get into heaven without children, but you can't get into heaven without having a husband. I said, wait, come again? Your salvation is based on if you have a man or not? I'm like, well, damn. Like, so if you're a single woman and you're Mormon, you can't get to heaven? I said, okay. I said, you know what? God bless. I feel like, Bravo, you guys need to make Britney full-time. I am extremely curious about her whole story. I want more. So season 6, let's have Britney come on full-time because the material is there. So now we jump right on over to Angie K. She's in one of her hair salons and she says that thank God people in SLC are so vain because business is booming and they're about to open up their 10th hair salon. So Angie K and Sean, they're doing well. And shame on you, Angie, for asking for that 15 grand back when you offered to throw that party for Coach Sean Jen. Girl, you know you have more than enough. That 15 grand was a drop in the bucket, but I digress. So now we see Bronwyn show up. She wants to get her hair done too. So as she's in the chair, Angie comes over to talk to her. And of course, they're gossiping about what went down at Lisa's Bezos party. So Angie K says that she really likes Bronwyn a lot, and she was worried about what Bronwyn thought about her when she left at Lisa's party. And Bronwyn's like, oh girl, you're cool. I like you a lot. You're great. But I did feel like what went down that night was a lot. And then she adds that she and Lisa will always be friends, but what Whitney said about her wasn't untrue. Now, Miss Bronwyn, that's not what you said in that car. When you were in Lisa's G-Wagon at the beginning of this episode, you were talking about, oh, Lisa, I agreed with what you said. Now, when you're in front of somebody else, now as well, what was said about Lisa wasn't untrue. Girl, it's giving two-faced. I'm just saying. So now Bronwyn mentions that she had a weird interaction with somebody at the dinner, and she goes on to say that they asked her, is it hard to get to know her? And she said, yes, it is. So Angie K says, well, if you don't mind me asking, who are you talking about? And Bronwyn says, I'm talking about Britney. I feel like she's all over the place. So now Angie K spills some tea that her and Britney went out together. They went bowling yesterday, and Britney brought up the whole fur jacket incident twice, and she thought it was weird. And now Bronwyn says, look, I'm not trying to call another woman stupid, but I don't even think that she can spell YSL. I said, wait, not she can't spell 3 letters. Bronwyn, that was a read. So now we cut to Bronwyn's confessional, and she reveals that women like Britney are the reason why she struggles with making female friends. She goes on to say that she hates feeling judged, and that this reminds her of when she got pregnant when she was at BYU and how the other girls there were laughing at her and talking behind her back. Now, I have to say, I'm quite curious to see how things play out between Britney and Bronwyn throughout the season, because I just feel like it's not that deep for Bronwyn and Britney to be at odds, and especially not over a YSL fur jacket. So now it's the day of Heather's team building event, and they're going to be walking a tightrope. So everybody arrives, and when I tell y'all, I could not stop laughing, because when Britney rolled up, Mary's like, Lord, please be with me, give me some grace today. Britney picks up on the shade, and she's like, I don't understand, why doesn't Mary like me? And then we cut to Mary's confessional, and she says she's not a good listener, and she's just not the sharpest knife in the drawer, or should I say the sharpest spoon.
It's because I tried to relate to her?
She's just not the sharpest knife in the drawer. She's not even the sharpest spoon.
I know I've said it before, but Mary truly has a way with words. So Lisa says that she's actively avoiding Angie and Whitney, and I said, Lisa girl, Angie K is avoiding you too, because even Angie said, you know it's bad when I'm more excited to see Meredith over Lisa. So we see everybody getting ready except for Meredith. Now, Meredith, you could have just said, I don't want to do it, because this excuse was so sorry. Meredith is out there talking about, oh, I have tennis elbow from churning butter. And production is so shady because they show the clips from 10 months ago when they were all churning butter last season. I said, Meredith, you know good and damn well that your elbows and your arms are just fine. You just don't want to do it. If you're afraid of heights, then just say that. But talking about, oh, I have tennis elbow, I can't do it. I said, girl, spare us the dramatics, spare us all these false ailments, and just tell us the truth. And Meredith, there really is no excuse, because if you have Mary Cosby participating, then you know you can do it too. So we see them all on the tightrope except for Meredith. She's on the ground cheering them on. But when I tell you, I was so shocked to see Mary up there, and Mary was doing a great job. Mary is really shining this season, and I am here for it. I'm just so happy that she is finally engaging and not giving us a half-assed performance. And I'm pretty sure that Bravo threatened you too and said, now, Mary, if you don't give us your all, you will be fired. Now, Mary, I do have to say, I thought it was a weird comment when you guys were finished and Whitney's friend Maylee was coming down. And you were like, oh, I thought that Maylee was thinner than that. And I was like, girl, what? And Maylee is skinny, so I don't know why you would even say that. I thought it was so weird. Every thought does not have to be said out loud. Some thoughts need to just remain in your head. I love how Heather had a food truck arranged for them. They're all ordering food. They had cheeseburgers and tacos and quesadillas and churros and ice cream. And you already know that my mouth was watering because I love all of the above. And now we see Mary talking about, oh, can she have a quesadilla with just beans and rice and cheese? Because she's not trying to go number 2. And I said, again, Mary, TMI, we don't need to know that. Can you just order your food and not give us all that extra commentary? That would be nice. So they're all sitting down to eat. They have some wine to go with the food. And then all of a sudden, Britney gets up to make this toast. Now, my first thought was, oh, she's toasting to them all having a fun day, getting along. But no, Britney starts talking about her relationship being on and off again. And I said, wait a second. I know that we're not about to toast to her and this grown-ass man who is stringing her along because he's not feeling her like that. And indeed, she was. So she goes on to say that last night Jared took her out and they bought matching jewelry at Louis Vuitton and he made it official on Instagram and he finally called her his girlfriend. And I love how Heather called her out. She was like, wait a second, he didn't make it Instagram official. You guys were at Costco together and he just posted that you guys were best friends. That's not Instagram official in my opinion. And I said, it sure isn't. And Britney, you should feel embarrassed. Also, Britney, why are you showing all 32 teeth over a man calling you his best friend and posting you up on his Instagram with a picture of you guys at Costco? You're acting like this man proposed to you with a Cartier ring or something. You're going out sad over a man that's not even your man. You sound ridiculous. Mary was everybody in this moment. Mary blurts out, why do we care about this? Britney's pissed and she snaps at Mary. She's like, Mary, that's so rude. So Mary's like, no, it's not rude. And by the way, you were rude to me the other night when you called me poor. So how about that? So now they go back and forth. Britney's like, I did not call you poor. I was trying to relate to you. And Mary says, yes, you did. You identified me with being poor. So Mary goes on to say, look, I don't care about your boyfriend announcement. And I'm sure that everybody else doesn't care either. I said, girl, whack her again for me, please.
I'm just scoot on over and let you whack him. Get him again. Get him for me.
That's not your boyfriend, sis. What are you talking about? And even though Mary can be rude and very blunt, this time I was 100% on her side because Britney, you sounded stupid. You looked crazy because why are we at somebody else's event and we're getting up to make a toast about our fake relationship? And that's very self-centered behavior. So now Heather interjects and she's asking Mary if Mary has any interest in getting to know Britney. So before Mary can answer, Britney interjects and she's like, don't you want me to care about what you're doing? And Mary says, I really don't care. So now Lisa interjects and she's like, Britney, I have to be honest, but if I were you, I'd be very worried about this. I think that Jared is working you over. So now Whitney jumps in and co-signs and she says, Jared seems nice, but he's very much like a politician where he says the right things, but his actions, it's not adding up. So now Whitney says, it's obvious that you're so into him and he kind of likes you, sis, but not that much. Pretty much, Britney likes him way more than he likes her. And one thing about it, our grandmothers were right when they said that the man has to like you more for it to work out. If it's the other way around,
no.
And Britney, I need you to stand up. I was so happy that the ladies were telling you the truth. Like, sis, he don't want you. You want him, but he doesn't feel the same way about you. Because again, sis, you're out here calling this man your boyfriend and he's calling you his friend. Exit stage left. So Whitney lets it be known that at the end of the day, this man needs to be claiming you as his woman and not his best friend. So now Britney admits that him referring to her as his best friend did hurt her feelings. And I said, but Britney, you could stop hurting your own feelings if you would wake up, stop being desperate, and leave this man. So now Heather interjects and she low-key puts Britney's business on blast. And I'm like, damn, Heather, that's really not your place, but okay. So Heather says, guys, Britney's going through a lot. She's going through some personal issues with her daughters and her exes. So now Britney reveals that neither one of her daughters will speak to her. So they're all shocked. And now Britney says that it's a bit complicated and she's not trying to talk about it right now. So now Mary jumps back in and Mary's like, wait, you don't want to talk about the issues with your daughters, but you want to share about your boyfriend? I'm confused. So Britney is not here for it. She's like, you just said a minute ago that you don't care about me. And Mary says, no, I didn't say that, but you do need to do some soul searching. Now I said, Mary, that's real rich coming from you because baby, you got more issues than Vogue. I don't know if you're the right person to tell anybody that they need to do some soul searching because Miss Mamas, let's not forget that you did marry your step grandfather. So that right there involves a whole lot of soul searching because why? Now we already know the why. It was for money, but things should never be that deep where you do something like that. So Britney says that she's a kind person and Mary says, if you're so kind, then why can't you make amends with your children? Child, I said, Mary, why did you say that? Because you know that Britney was pissed. So now we get some tea from Mary in her confessional. And Mary reveals that the reason why Britney triggers her is because it hits close to home. We learn that Mary's mom did the same thing, always chasing behind men. And Mary and her 5 siblings were unattended. They were running loose. There was no discipline. And then she reveals that there were times where they weren't being fed. But Mary also shares that there were times where she didn't feel like she was loved. And that's why hearing Britney go on about having a man and being estranged from her daughters really triggers her. She says that it hurts her to her core because she would never do that to her son. Again, I was blown away because Mary never shares anything about her life. Very tight-lipped. But it was nice to see Mary share a real vulnerable moment. And Mary, I mean this with all sincerity, if you ever decide to write a book, it will be a bestseller. Your book will fly off the shelves because I think that your whole entire story is so fascinating and we barely know 1/10 of what went down. So Britney's livid and she's like, you have no idea what you're talking about. Mary, you need to shut up. So while Britney and Mary are going at it, Britney puts her finger in Mary's face and Mary says, girl, put your finger down. So now Britney starts yelling that Mary better not ever bring up her kids ever again. And I said, now hold on, Britney, let's not do that. Mary did not bring up your kids. All she said was, if you're so kind, why can't you make amends with your kids? That's it. Don't act like she brought your kids up out of nowhere and was talking bad about them. That's not what happened. Let's not play semantics here, sis. So now Lisa interjects and she's like, all right, guys, let's stop. This is going way too far. And Mary had the line of the night. She said, it's not going far enough. I said, ooh. So now Heather jumps in defense of Britney and she says, guys, please respect Britney, especially if you respect me. That's my friend. So now Bronwyn jumps in because she wants the smoke and she says, honestly, Britney, everything that I've learned about you is chaotic AF. You're on again, then you're off again. You're in a Costco cart. I said, not a Costco cart. You called me a hoarder, then you called her poor, and honestly, you came in hot and wild. So Bronwyn continues on by saying that Britney is pretty much sloppy with her words, and Britney needs to get her words tight. So now Heather turns to Bronwyn, and it was clear that Heather thought she was about to have this big moment, and I'm so sorry, Heather, but this moment flopped. So Heather calls out Bronwyn for being two-faced. She says, really, Bronwyn? You want to talk about folks getting their words tight? Well, let's get your words tight. Just the other day, when we were in Lisa's car, you were Team Lisa and you were saying horrible things about Whitney. It just feels very two-faced. So now everybody's in shock, and Whitney's like, well, can you please tell me what were the horrible things said about me? So Heather tells Whitney what was said, and Whitney's like, girl, Bronwyn told me that when me and her hung out. I already knew that. That's not even bad. I said, oh, Heather, I know you feel dumb. So Whitney's not here for Heather's theatrics, and she says it feels like Heather's energy is way off about this whole situation. Then she goes on to say that Heather is trying to conflate two separate issues. So now Angie K jumps in, and she's trying to be the voice of reason, and she says, well, in Bronwyn's defense, maybe she just heard a bit more of Whitney's side, and everybody's entitled to change their minds. So they agree with that, and I said, once again, Angie, this drama has nothing to do with you. You have to learn how to sit the conversation out. I understand that you want some camera time. If I were you, I would just sit there and eat my food and mind my business. So Bronwyn's irritated. She points out that everybody has talked about everybody, and she's so shocked and appalled that her words are being used against her. Now I said, Bronwyn, welcome to the show. That's how it goes on The Real Housewives. Now, I don't know how we got to let's all own our words to Whitney talking about when somebody opens up about their trauma, then don't weaponize it against them. I said, girl, what are you talking about? And you know that pissed Lisa off. Lisa's like, are you referring to me? I don't do that. Nobody here weaponizes anybody's trauma. I don't do that. So now Whitney brings up how Lisa, Heather, and Meredith all steamrolled her at Lisa's Bezos party. So Lisa's like, no, we did not. We did not steamroll you. Don't say that. That's not what it was. Steamrolling is when you go on somebody else's podcast and you talk about your friends. That's steamrolling. And I said, Whitney, if you don't hurry up and give Lisa this apology, because I am so sick and tired of hearing her whine and complain and go off about this podcast episode that you did. My goodness. Like I said earlier, you would think that Whitney called her out of her name or something, the way Lisa has been carrying on. So Whitney gives that non-apology. She says, well, I'm sorry if you perceived it that way, but I need you to understand why I felt that way because you provoked me to act out like that. And Lisa says, look, girl, all you do is talk in feelings. I'm over it. Let's talk in facts. And I said, that's a good point. Because everything with Whitney is, I felt this way, and my feelings and healing and trauma, we're tired. Give us something else, Whitney, please. And in your case, you're always talking about your feelings. The way she says feelings drives me up a wall. It's feel, not feel. So Whitney shades Lisa and she says, well, the facts are you're a shitty friend. So Lisa says, you're a shitty friend. Where are my calls? Where are my texts? When do you ever invite me anywhere? When? I'll wait. So while they're going back and forth, Meredith tries to jump in. They cut her off. She tries to jump back in again. They cut her off again. I said, Meredith, girl, maybe wait until another event to air out your grievances with Whitney, because today is just not your day to air out your issues too. So now Whitney finally apologizes, Lisa thanks her, and then she goes on to say that she appreciates the apology, but it still does not take away from the issues that they have. The main issue when it comes to you and Whitney is that you guys are not meant to be friends. It's a very uneven friendship. So we cut to Meredith in her confessional, and she says, now, would I appreciate an apology from Whitney? Yes. But do I realize that I'm not going to get it? Also, yes. And I said, no, Meredith, I want to know what exactly do you want the apology for? I do remember Whitney apologizing to you about the past issues in the earlier seasons. But are you expecting an apology for the bath bombs? Like, let me know, because I was a bit confused by that. So Whitney says that overall, she thinks that everybody at this table is amazing, and she's happy that today happened, and now she wants to invite everybody on her girls' trip to Milwaukee. So she informs them that Trixie Mattel invited her out to have her host her drag show, and she wants them all to come. So now Whitney reveals that she booked a private jet for them, and they're all excited. So now she makes a joke saying that she did her research and there will be a bathtub for Meredith. So now Meredith interjects and she says, well, I don't think I'll be able to make it, but we'll talk about that later. So now we cut to Meredith in her confessional and she says, Who wouldn't want to go to Milwaukee in the middle of the winter? Whitney was so over it. She said, girl, I hope you don't go then. And then Whitney goes on to say that if these bitches can't get it together for 2 days, then they have way bigger problems. And that's where the episode ends. Y'all, when I tell you that SLC is giving what the other girls were supposed to have gave, in the words of the iconic Rolling Ray, because this episode was a 10 out of 10, and the fact that they are starting off so strong lets me know that the rest of this season is about to be that girl. Everyone is present and accounted for, and everybody is engaging, especially Mary, and I'm loving it. But y'all, a great episode. I enjoyed it. I hope you all enjoyed my recap. Thank you all so much for watching or listening. And you already know what to do. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you all later. Bye.